respect you being prompt and on time. And so what do you say we begin? And I will stop sharing our screens so that we can both see one another. My name is Larry Raff. I'm thrilled to host the first Donor Ask webinar series sponsored by Abacus Major Donor Ask Calculator. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Matt Hugg, who is a veteran of our business, both as a frontline fundraiser, instructor of international scope, and has created a tremendous resource that I want you all to take advantage of. Nonprofit.courses is a resource of paid and free content for all aspects of the nonprofit business. The greatest collection I've seen anywhere. And it's well organized and very accessible. And Matt, I commend you for putting this together as a great resource for our industry.
Well, thank you, Larry. No, it's I've really played to my natural tendencies of organization. So
there you go. And we're going to hear all about that today, because we're going to talk about dealing with the rising costs of running a nonprofit. Yeah. There's a lot of dimensions to it. And I think we all know, and our guests I'm sure know, that payroll staff that are the lifeblood of any organization are also the largest line item of most organizations. So perhaps you can dive in and address how our visitors, our guests here, can think about addressing that cost in their own shops.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are some key things that any nonprofit can do to reduce costs, particularly in fundraising, and labor is like number one on the list. And so, I made some notes here. I'm going to every once in a while check down on them because I want to make sure we cover these points because they're really important. So staff longevity is huge, and particularly in fundraising. And I say that because, I haven't looked lately at the statistics, but I mean, it's always been like 18 months, 20 months, something like that for the average tenure of a fundraiser. And there are a lot of reasons for it. And yet that hurts nonprofits the most when they are trying to raise money. If you are a staffed shop for raising money in a nonprofit, if somebody doesn't stick around, they can't build the relationships, they can't do the things that need to happen for fundraising to happen well and effectively. And hey, no surprise that the longer a staff person is in place as a fundraiser, the more money they will get for you. Now, there are a lot of reasons behind this. And Larry, I think you probably have seen a lot of this, right? Is that people will say, well, somebody else is going to offer them more money. Well, maybe so, right? These aren't cheap positions. But the biggest thing, and a little bit of standing on my soapbox here, because you talked about being on the line a bit. I think the beard's hiding the scars. Is that a lot of nonprofit fundraisers aren't managed well. But they're managed a lot by people who don't understand fundraising and think maybe it's just a sales job. And it's a lot different. It's related, but it's not the same. So there's a lot behind that.
I want to jump in also to say that a lot of managers in nonprofits have never been trained on how to be a manager.
Yes.
And not only not understanding fundraising, but knowing how to manage.
Yes, right. Because people who work in nonprofits, as they go higher up, right? They started as the most passionate environmentalists, say, and then they're ending up leading this environmental nonprofit, or maybe they've started one like that, but they didn't have that experience. And then, of course, add to that, managing a fundraiser is different. I'd love to see, a CFREM for management for people who would like to manage fundraising.
There's a whole new dimension for your coursework offering.
There you go. That's it. Uh, but then also, there's stressful work conditions. I mean, I used to, I years ago did an article for the Army Times and for veterans coming back and maybe wanting to get into nonprofits and to say, the working conditions are not going to be better than maybe if they saw even an overseas deployment. So there's a lot going on there, and that, it takes a lot to be a fundraiser. So with that in mind, right, it's important that we look at, like, I'm a big devotee of this book this guy Daniel Pink wrote, called Drive. And in fact, it's Drive: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates It. Another fella, Tim Kasser, wrote something called The High Price of Materialism. And both these books kind of fit together. And what Pink said is it's all about autonomy, mastery, purpose. Now, notice he didn't say to keep people motivated, you need to pay them a lot of money. It's fascinating that to keep people motivated, you have to give them as much money as is plausible to live a reasonable lifestyle wherever you are. Okay. But when they have autonomy, mastery, and purpose, they do much better than just giving them another raise, throwing more money at them. The money thing doesn't work. Unless, it was interesting, he found that it worked if you are doing rote work, like building a widget time and time and time and time again, right? Then money seems to be an incentive. So what he said, autonomy, right? Non-profits really are geared for autonomy because typically you're understaffed and you got to do a lot of things, right? And you can't always be watched. And if you're in a micromanagement mode for a nonprofit, there's a lot of issues wrong getting back to how to manage people, right? But that being autonomous really isn't that hard, giving folks a little rope to do the things their way, right? So that's one. Mastery, right? That's getting people to learn while they are working. Go to nonprofit.courses, go to, AFP, whatever it is, right? But keep people learning about their thing or your mission, either way, right?
So
But
invest in professional development,
yeah,
budget
and
for professional development.
well, budget for, or like, come to nonprofit.courses, find a lot of free stuff. That's great, whatever it is, right? But learn, but it doesn't have to be formal classroom kind of, do a webinar or something like that. You could do podcasts, you can learn kind of on the job stuff, have a mentoring program set up, whatever it is to keep their brain active so that they're thinking, wow, I'm building my skill set, whatever that is. And then, so autonomy, mastery, purpose. Nonprofits own purpose. Plain and simple, right? If you work for a for-profit company, yeah, you have something you want to do, right? But the purpose is, making money for the company. Nonprofits, the purpose is your mission. One thing we neglect to do is keep fundraisers in particular, but a lot of internal staff connected to your mission. So keep them connected to their mission. They care about it, especially in nonprofit fundraisers. They need to sell that mission out there, right? So you might say, what are you doing in the office? Well, if they are learning about the mission or dealing with mission issues, that's fine because they need to take that information out.
So, if I may, this issue comes up a lot in healthcare in that often the fundraisers are in a building off campus.
Oh, higher ed too. I see that.
And higher ed too, because real estate is such a hot commodity in those institutions that they put the non-essentials off to the side, and you lose touch with the mission.
And actually, you hit a really good point there, the non-essentials, because what are you going to do without money, right? You got to treat these people like they're cool. So bottom line for our discussion here, a great way to keep your costs low is to keep your staff happy, to give them the autonomy, mastery, and purpose they need that for the long haul, and to treat your fundraisers like they're going to be around for a while and they're not just hired guns. So that's number one.
How do volunteers figure into this?
Yeah,
Because
volunteers are a big part of this, but it's interesting that a lot of folks either, you don't trust volunteers or they don't use them. I encourage people to think of volunteers as an extension of themselves. Put it in theater terms, right? That the moves management kind of works like this, where you are the theater director. You're the person who is the wizard behind the curtain, say, right? But you are going to make sure that everything happens in that theater. And sometimes you can play a part, and sometimes you are behind the scenes, and that's just fine. You can raise a lot of money and never ask for a dime yourself, as long as you are getting the volunteers out there to do what they need to do. So yeah, engaging volunteers is a huge way of saving money in nonprofit fundraising. There's another way too, which is really important. I firmly believe that, except maybe major gifts where you have to have one-to-one personal relationships, you can contract out or outsource a lot of the fundraising operation. And that is really overlooked by a lot of folks, and where the manager becomes a manager of contractors, not necessarily of employees, and they can really kind of dial up or dial down their need of people that way.
I see
And
this as especially true in direct mail,
mhm.
where it's a real detailed and technical expertise to do well, and you can't expect a staff person to do it well. And
Well,
the return on that investment, if you have a program, is quite good. And grant writing is the other one that
yeah, you see,
I
those
think
are the places where it's relatively common. In fact, direct mail is interesting because you have different skill sets along the way. You have data skill sets, you have the actual logistics of the printing and the mailing, and then you have the copywriting and the graphics and all of that. So having one person have all those skills is really almost impossible. And so there is a bit of a tradition in direct mail to do contract stuff. And like you said, grant proposal writing too is another area where you see this quite a bit. And yet there are ways of working people in. Now, I've come to depend in my business on folks I find every once in a while on Upwork, on Fiverr, right? And the one thing I will say, first of all, that's a great way to go national and get talent all over the place, maybe even international. But don't expect them to, you have to vet them. You have to screen them, not for, I mean, if you're going to have contact with people, that's a different kind of screening. I mean, make sure that you are um, getting the person who has the credentials you need, and that the credentials are right, making sure that they're accessible when you need them. Having being able these platforms now have video conversation possibilities. And those are really good ways of being able to get people as you need them. Don't think you're taking a job away from somebody, because actually these people are looking for employment themselves. This is their lifestyle to do this. They're trying to be flexible around whatever life is for them. And a lot of these people have actually done really well enough that they are on Upwork all the time, and that's the only way they get clients. So look at those services for keeping your costs down and being able to regulate things. And like I said, turn things off, turn things on.
I'm actually using someone we found from Fiverr right now.
Yeah,
You
there you
know,
go. Yeah, yeah. No, it really makes a difference. I have a couple of folks I work on for that for a number of things. So we talked about interns and co-ops. All right, what's the difference? Interns tend to be there for educational experience. Now, you can pay interns, right? You don't have to pay interns. That's up to you and them, right? But I also want to encourage people to look at co-ops. There are a couple of co-op focused schools. If you're in Boston, there's Northeastern. Here in Philadelphia, there's Drexel, University of Cincinnati, GMI in Michigan, right? And but there are a lot of schools that do co-op where somebody is actually there to get work experience, which is a little different than the internship thing. Also, a lot of co-op programs will have flip programs where you get this person in your shop for 3 months, and then somebody else comes in for 3 months, and then that first person comes back for the next 3 months.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so you're cycling through people's, and you're not losing that experience over time. Co-op is a really great advantage to you and them. When I worked at a university one time, we had a problem that our fellow who was in charge of writing grant proposals was getting bombarded by faculty all the time to, oh, get me $5,000 here, go, there's a $10,000 thing, right? It was eating them alive. We got a student worker in our case, kind of a hybrid between intern and co-op, and we taught that person how to write what I'll call minor grants, the small stuff. Now our foundation person went up and was starting to get grants that actually justified his salary. And it made a huge difference in our bottom line. We ended up, this guy got some life skills, really job skills that they could take out later on. It was a good win-win for everybody.
Just the point I want to make about outsourcing, and of course, excuse me, I didn't mention I'm president of Copley Raff, which is a national consulting firm.
Sure.
That you're hiring expertise you don't have,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that you need in order to accomplish whatever objectives that you have. And so even though you're paying, excuse me, the outsourced person more than you might pay someone who's on staff,
mm-hmm.
Understand that that's all they're focused on is just what you're hiring them to do. So the return on that investment typically for the expertise and the focus is more than justified over time.
Well, and let's clarify what you mean by paying more. You mean maybe more per hour, but not more overall.
Good point. More per hour. Good point.
And that makes a difference. I've Upwork is kind of my preferred platform, and I have found prospect researchers. I've had proposal writers. I found graphic designers, web designers, all sorts of things. You'd be surprised who's out there offering their services. So worth checking out.
Could you talk a little bit about stewardship and the value of that against the cost of, losing donors and keeping donors?
Yeah, I will tell you that the right next to staff costs, having happy donors is the best way you can save money in fundraising. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. That if you don't want to deal with staff, that's fine. But if you can make your donors happy and stick with you, you are going to be way ahead. I mean, let's face it, business knows this intrinsically, right? It's so much cheaper for them to keep a customer than to find a new customer. I mean, why do you think they mail to you all the time? They want you in their special programs. They want to keep you close because now you are cheaper to keep and you will produce more for them in income than somebody they have to go find off the street and bring in as a new customer. So you'll never get the back door, as they call it, closed, right, with people leaving you. But as much as you can keep donor retention numbers up, you are way better off and you have a much less expensive fundraising operation. I mean, let's just take, talked about direct mail before, right? And which, by the way, I'll throw out that a false savings that a lot of people say, well, we're not going to mail paper stuff anymore. We're just going to do everything on email and social media. And you will lose because now direct mail by itself does okay. And I will come back to that in a second. Electronic does okay, but they are much more powerful together when they are coordinated. And that's where you're going to make your money. But we're going to say direct mail, just for example's sake here, if somebody think about donor acquisition versus donor retention. Everybody says, oh, when I get direct mail stuff, I throw it out. Maybe. You might throw it out for the organization that you've never heard of, who just sends you a blind thing because they're an acquisition piece. And acquisition mailings only get like 2-3% tops, right?
That's a good response rate.
That's right. But if you have a donor who already knows you and loves you, they're going to open that up. Much higher chance of them opening that up, opening up the email, whatever it is, right? Because they want to know what's going on. There's a land conservancy nearby here, right? They send stuff, and even though I'm not going to give, I want to learn what's going on there, right? So I'll open that up because I like the organization, not just because, oh, it's another letter. Yeah, sure, they're going to throw out some fundraising letters and all this, right? But the point is that, again, acquisition costs a lot more money than retention. And, direct mail is a great example of that.
And let's not forget that digital requires people to write things and to do creative and to post it. There are expenses, personnel expenses related to digital, just like direct mail.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's something, a lot of folks will say, well, we're going to do crowdfunding, right? And yeah, the platforms, that make it easy, right? But don't do that to save time because running a crowdfunding campaign requires all the same basics as running a regular campaign, any traditional campaign, for having, a case, being able to gather the whole thing. The whole process just works, go through the fundraising cycle. You're not saving time. It's a different technique. You might get different people, but it's a little false savings in those. So let's see, talked about retaining donors and the cost of acquisition. Monthly giving. Monthly giving is a really good way of saving money, because for the cost of the same cost as picking up a donor for one gift, now you're going to get them for 12, and maybe they're going to give you $100 for the year, maybe $50. But if they give you $10 a month, you're already past that, and they feel better about it, and they don't feel like it's a burden, and they'll probably just keep that going. So yeah, things like monthly giving, that makes a big difference.
Remind people too, I often tell folks that every time I get my credit card statement where I see my monthly giving to nonprofits that I support, you get that good feeling because you've given, and you get that good feeling every month.
And
it's a nice
and how else can you get a good feeling out of a credit card statement?
There you go. That's how you do it.
That's a good selling point. We should offer that. Okay, there's a takeaway, guys, for this webinar, right? Tell them that they will get a good feeling out of their credit card statement if they put you on there.
I'm going to give you 12 good feelings right now.
That's it. So what's the best way to start a monthly campaign? It's doing the same kind of, first of all, make sure that you have monthly giving as an option in your boxes or whatever you're doing, right? And that you're set up for it on the receiving end. A lot of people, monthly giving comes in a lot of ways. It could be credit card out. It could be that you're going to charge do a electronic fund transfer out of their bank account, right? But you got to make it easy. You have to make it clean, and so have the infrastructure set up. I will tell you, one way to do this is to start a giving club. To start a monthly giving club. I worked with a couple of folks who've done this. It really seems to go well, where you give them special recognition for being a monthly donor, and then you can raise the flag for other people and say, hey, don't you want to be part of this giving group? These are special people. And it kind of feeds on itself. So I would start, once the infrastructure is in place, by advertising the monthly club. I don't know, whatever it is, right? But to make a big deal out of them, which brings us to an important part, right? Which is stewardship. Stewardship is like the orphan child of fundraising.
Well put.
I mean, it really is. People just say, oh, well, I got the gift, we're going to move on now and do the other, do other things, right? But stewardship is going to save you money, because it's going to keep your retention higher and your acquisition costs can be lower, or at least be more effective. So make your donors happy with you. Over communicate. Now, right, you might think, oh, I'm putting out too much, right? And there's too many things going on, right? They're not listening to me. No. You don't hear like they hear. and they will tell you whether you're doing too much or not enough. And you can gauge now with your database and being able to, and something that is really important in saving money all over, watching your numbers, not just the dollar numbers coming in, but the interactive numbers. We can do this better than ever before. So if you see people interacting with your website more, if you see them making smaller gifts or all over the place, they are your super donors, even though maybe they're only giving $10, once or twice or whatever, right? So you want to connect with them more often and do that. Let's see.
Phil would like to speak up and ask a question. Phil,
Yeah, I think I know Phil from someplace.
Unmute yourself, Phil. Or I can do it for you. Let's see here.
Or just throw it in the chat. That'd be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I'm not quite sure how I did that, Larry and Matt. How did I get on your screen like that?
That's
all right. Just ask your question.
Do you have a question?
Not a question, just a comment. Matt, I was laughing before. You were talking about how on direct mail, it's difficult to find people who have all of the skills to pull together what it takes to do it. The creative, the list creation, the understanding who to target and all that. So I just had to laugh because that's kind of like what I've been doing. I've been talking to Larry about this as well. So I didn't mean to take this over. I have absolutely no idea how I managed to bump into your
not a problem.
All right.
Glad to hear from you, Phil, and good to make contact in a different venue. Phil and I attend a group called Nonprofit Executive Network together. Look it up. There's a bonus point for everybody on the call.
That's right. It's a great networking group. I'd like to, Matt, move quickly to just technology.
Yes.
Operations. My big rub with tech is, and there's a lot of great tech out there.
Oh yeah.
Is that staff aren't prepared to take advantage of the technology, and
yes,
it scare them, and changing their habits is difficult. It's the whole change management issue. Please give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got to always ask yourself, is there an app for that? Is there something coming up that you didn't know about last year because it didn't exist last year that now exists this year that you can do, even with software that you already have? It's important to keep up with what that is all about. You're right. Technology can be a real bugaboo. The other thing about technology is you got to look what the competitors are coming up, so that you are always saying, okay, so I'm using this now. Can I use that over there for less expensive, or something combined or broken apart that might be easier? You can. I mean, TechSoup, that's a great place. I imagine everybody knows about that, but you want to do that.
They offer discounts to nonprofits for all kinds of technology.
Oh yeah, yeah, hardware and software, I understand. And then annually, maybe set up an annual review of your software subscriptions, because most software now is subscription, and to say, okay, how do we need? Are we using it? Are we using it can we adjust our payment, right? Can we bump down for some of these because we're not using it as much? And see if there are any others out there. I think that's a really important thing to do for technology, because these annual fees can really eat you alive unless you keep track of them. So if you set a date in the calendar to say, okay, we're going to look at this, and get your accountant involved. They always want to save money, right?
And get salespeople involved to actually try and sell you stuff, because you'll learn a great deal.
Exactly.
I like to. Stephanie has a question about the benefits of Chat GTP or GPT for fundraisers. It's a hot topic right now.
It is. My experience with it is that it's being oversold right now, at least. There are some. I go using. I've used Chat GPT kind of in an experimental way a couple times. And it's great for prompting ideas and kind of getting me thinking about stuff. It's not something I could rely on. necessarily, but there are companies that have taken advantage of it. I understand Grammarly has done a lot of good work with with AI and
I
Chat
use
GPT.
Grammarly all the time. It's a fantastic service.
Yeah, exactly. So look at this. One of my content experts down in Florida is coming out with an advisory service on AI stuff. So there are people who can look at your operation and say, "Oh yeah, there's where you can use it. Maybe not there yet." It'll evolve.
It will. Under the heading of time is money, when I run across an article online that's way too long to read and I don't have time for, I actually go to ChatGTP and I say summarize, and then I put the link
Oh,
to the article, just summarize and the URL, and boom, you'll get yourself 100-word summary of what could be a 3,000-word article.
cool.
And it really does save time, and it gets you what you need out of the article.
No, exactly.
I want to encourage people to ask questions as we're going here. We're promised to end this at 2:45, and I have a brief commercial announcement coming up, but I want you to ask your questions.
Well, one thing I'll tell you while folks are kind of ginning those up is I am a big fan of Facebook Marketplace and thrift stores. So, if you go, like I got a desk here, I found it at a thrift store. I have had it for years. I love it. Right.
Yeah.
But especially for small nonprofits who are in the first place, look, if you have any capital needs, like, office equipment or things like that, is check out what you can find there. You're often, not always, often helping another nonprofit. The other thing too is to look at shared services. There's so many things that nonprofit organizations do, businesses do too, but that can really work well if combined together. There are companies out there who will handle your gifts processing, but maybe, you work with another nonprofit and are able to do gifts processing as a joint activity, or do, share graphic designers, whatever it is, right? Look at shared services between either your competition or your not competition, your peers in your community, to see if you can take advantage of some synergies that way.
There's also, and it's sometimes fraught to even bring it up, and that is mergers. There's a lot of redundancy out there in terms of services being provided by nonprofit organizations. A lot of funders in certain cities that fund both are saying to them, money's going to go away unless the two of you start talking about getting together.
Right.
And there's some obviously real cost savings to doing those things.
And shared services is a great way to explore that.
And to begin that.
Right. To see, if there is compatibility to share some of these back office kind of functions. I had a donor one time suggest to me, because I was at University of Cincinnati, and he said, "Why are you here just for UC?" This guy was a graduate, I think, of Kent as well. And he said, "You should be here for both schools, because, the Ohio schools should get together and not each spend money to send somebody to me in New Jersey." And that made a lot of sense.
There are people who I've run into people who call themselves hospital junkies. They give to all the hospital. I'm in Boston. There's a hospital on every street corner, and they give to all the big hospitals. So there's that too.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's a lot of things come together on these.
On the technology side, something I see quite a bit is our organizations that have databases, CRM systems that are far too sophisticated for needs. Right?
Yes.
So, they're trying to light a candle with a blowtorch instead of a match, and those cost money. Those more sophisticated systems cost more money that you don't need to be spending.
I won't name it, but there is one in particular I will tell people. It's like the human brain; you'll only ever use 10% of it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's a big area for cost savings.
Cost savings area is to go out. Well, we're kind of talking about this. Talk to vendors. When you go to an AFP conference case, AHP, whatever it is, right? Make sure you get to know the vendors at the booth, because they want to save you money. And the nice thing about in the nonprofit area in particular, most of those people have nonprofit experience personally. They know what your pain is, and they might be bringing a product, and of course they want you to use their product, right? But if they can save you money, they will do it. And they will also, by the way, it's a great networking thing. They know other people, and so they will be able to connect you with other people if they can't offer that service, who they say, yeah, I was talking to Bob three booths down, and he might have something here. So yeah, keep up with the vendors. They're a really important network for you for cost savings.
Does anyone have any questions that you'd like to put into the chat? Perhaps while you're thinking of that, I'm going to share a screen for a moment.
Yeah.
And
I know those people.
And I'm going to take some personal privilege and introduce you to a new product, talking about technology and products that will save you money in the major donor space. This is Abacus Major Donor Ask Calculator. It was launched last week. It's my creation over the last 10 years plus. And a few things that it does is it goes beyond wealth estimators that really don't help you come up with a number to ask someone for a major gift, which is what this is about. It operationalizes your donor research. You gather all this information. Now what? How do you come up with a number to ask someone for? You can defend the ask amount. Sometimes donors will ask you, how the hell did you come up with that number? Well, you need an answer for that. And Donor Abacus provides you with that. It's highly predictive. Right now, the pledge goal here on the right, the 30,000 in this scenario, is within 2% of actual pledges from real donors from these calculations. So far, we're very predictive. It also helps you determine if you're ready to make an ask. You can see here the ask readiness score, and it helps you value your portfolios and your pipeline. Using that pledge goal, if you do profiles for your top 50 or 100 donors, you're going to have a real good idea of what you can legitimately expect to raise from those folks. And if you're thinking about a campaign, do that for your top 50 donors, and that'll give you a sense of what real money is out there for you to consider when deciding whether to move forward with a campaign. Thank you.
Larry, could I jump in here just for a second about this?
Certainly.
And I will tell you what I think is the best about this. And we've talked about it, right? And I have to confess to folks, I'm an enthusiastic, I mean, I love this concept. I really do. Because it takes the bias out of the ask number. We all come in with some, oh, for years when I raised money for an engineering college, right, I'd go and meet somebody who lived in this house that just didn't look like where they were on paper, and come to find that they were the millionaire next door kind who saved, right, and if I had just gone with what I saw, it would have been hugely different than what something like this would come up with. Yeah, it takes, we all have biases in all different ways. This normalizes the process so that you can really get what you should be getting from a donor.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a very important point. I've actually did 10 years of research on that topic, and the bias from fundraisers on the same sets of information is dramatic. And so the calculator provides objective data around which to make decisions about how much to ask for a 3-year pledge. So visit donorabacus.com and you can try it for free and take it for a spin around the block.
Yeah. Now, talking about major gifts, one of the things that, in fact, I made sure I had in my notes here was, major gifts usually means travel. And looking for ways to save money on travel is huge. Like when I used to go to New York a lot, I would find a hotel in New Jersey that, number one, cheaper than New York. Number two, it was right on the waterfront. And so half the day I could spend in the city. I took the New York Waterways taxi across over, right, and did calls there. And the other half a day I was in New Jersey, doing things like what I used to call keystone calls, where you have one visit you have to make, and then are able to build your day around that, even for, checking out things, working with more minor, I guess, calls for the rest of the day, right? And then getting to know your travel sites really well. Travel's a lot different than it used to be. If you can focus on one or two travel sites and be really expert at those and learning how to save money with them, you're much better off these days. And so pick just a couple of favorites and get to really know those well.
And it really helps you get more appointments when you can tell a donor that you're already meeting in Midtown. Yep. Can we have lunch?
Yeah, especially if you're not from Midtown, you're from far away or something.
Yeah,
they will make time for you that way for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
what else can I tell you? I mean, there's
we may give you 3 minutes back to your life that you didn't have before.
Yeah, so, I mean, saving money is an important thing, and yet we overlook the big things. The staffing. We overlook the donor retention. We're always, I mean, it's human. It's not just, don't feel bad about this. We always look for those little things we can pick up, pennies here and there, and we let the dollars go out the door. Focus on some of those big things like donor retention, happy staff, things like that. And you're going to start keeping the dollars in the door, not just the pennies.
Right. Hey, listen, Matt, great suggestions. Very much appreciate your wisdom and participation in this. And there's still no alternative to raising more money.
That's right.
At the end of the day, don't forget the top line in addition to the bottom line.
Yeah. That it seems to solve everything, doesn't
it? Revenue helps most things. Yeah. Everyone, I'm going to send you all a recording of this session in a couple of days. Thank you very much for joining us, and please look for more webinars coming down the road from Abacus.
And please check out nonprofit.courses, not .org or .com, .courses. It is a top-level domain, and we would love to have you there and see what's all there to have. And also, we have if you get the newsletter we put out, like this one was advertised for this week. It's the live events calendar sent to you every week.
The site will blow you away. Check it out.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.